Hey guys, Mr. Ridgway here, and today we are going to be dealing with the Eerie Egyptians. Go ahead, first things first, get your warm-up done. Please make sure you sign in with Microsoft, and we'll get going. So what are our objectives today? Once you've done your warm-up, again, please continue along with me here. We're going to analyze the development and characteristics of Egypt, and then once we've done that, we're going to look at some of the roles that Egyptian gods and goddesses have played in society. You'll see the last thing that's on our agenda there on our circle is something called a vocab matrix. This is a puzzle that's going to have a worksheet that goes along with it, and that will be due by next block. So please make sure that you have that turned in to me. Don't forget, okay? The only thing that we're going to be doing in this video today is in particular the mini lesson. So let's get going. Egypt's geography, culture, the Old, Middle, New Kingdom. Make sure you grab the note outlines if you need them. Let's go. What similar characteristics can be found in cultures regardless of where they're located? And how do cultures respond to common human events such as death? Because that is going to be something that the Egyptians in particular are a bit obsessed with. Egypt is wholly the gift of the Nile, a quote from Herodotus here. So in a second, you're going to pause the video, and during that time, I'd like you to tell me, what do you think this quote is saying? Again, please pause the video because I'm going to spoil the answer here in about 5 seconds. So the answer to this quote is that Egypt would simply not exist if the Nile was not there. The Nile's really important. Okay, it's another one of these river valleys, cultural hearths, whatever you'd like to call it, and it has some remarkably important significance. Okay, so let's talk about some basic geography stuff with Egypt first. Okay, Egypt is divided up into two sections. There's an upper and a lower Egypt. Now, be careful because it is not based off of a north-south kind of paradigm that you're used to. When Egyptians, or when we refer in Egypt's geography that there's an upper and a lower Egypt, upper and lower refer to where you are on the Nile. And guess what? The Nile flows up or up. Okay, it flows north, which means that Upper Egypt is down there and Lower Egypt is up there, okay, north-south speaking. Okay, and that is because if you have the bias that all rivers flow south in your mind, this is going to sound very confusing to you. Again, the Nile flows upwards. Please make sure you know that. It's really important. Okay, other things about geography. As you can see there, it is surrounded on both sides by desert, and that is going to protect it from invasion. At the same time, again, with the Nile being there right in the center, it's going to provide life, transportation, all those good things. The Nile, as John Green will talk about in some videos here later, it was very navigable, at least until you start hitting cataracts, which were waterfalls down below. And it's also not super dangerous. Now, it would flood every spring and bring soil, which is why we get civilizations there in Egypt. But everything from life to transportation, it's all centered around the Nile. Now, other weird things about geography that you should know, besides the Nile being the center of everything, deserts on both sides of it, right? The lower and upper Egypt terms, is that there's this triangle right here. Okay, and this happens when any big water stream, river, etc., hits a body of water, and that is that it spreads out, and we call this a delta. Okay, this area, like the math delta, and basically, you want to kind of think of this as like a very kind of like swampy marshland. Okay, it's good for farming, and it forms at the mouths of most rivers. Okay, there's a Mississippi Delta, for example, et cetera. Now, how is Egypt organized? Well, if you know anything about Egypt, which you should have talked about in your warm-up, I hope that you would at least know that there was a pharaoh there, okay? And they are on the top of the pyramid, pun very intended. Government officials below them, kind of like priests and priestesses. Again, notice the high level of religion there in this society. Merchants, scribes, artisans, and then peasant farmers there on the very bottom, not even on the social hierarchy, would be slaves. Something to note about this is you can tell that the first two tops of the pyramids are because the pharaoh is considered to be descended from the sun god Ra, and is literally considered to be like a god incarnate on earth. This type of government, where you have religious leaders in charge, is technically called a theocracy. Okay, it's a good term to know. It's spelled over here for you. Just please make sure you note that, because this is a new type of government that we haven't talked about yet. Now, Egypt's writing, okay, is called hieroglyphics. Okay, if it looks like you opened up the Microsoft Word and you went, I want to type everything in wingdings. Okay, now you can see an example of it down there. It's actually an incredibly sophisticated writing style. In some cases, they can refer to people. In other cases, they can stand for phrases or sounds. The only reason why today we can read hieroglyphics is because of that rock that is right there. And that is called the Rosetta Stone. So if you've heard or seen those commercials that are about like learn a foreign language, that's where we get this from, okay? What was it? Well, there was this little soldier called Napoleon that you've probably never heard about. It was actually one of his soldiers that found it. And it was a rock on it in Egypt that was discovered, okay, in the early 1800s. And it had 3 lines of writing on it. There were 2 lines of Egyptian, different kinds between those, and then 1 section of it that was in Greek. And because people today do still speak Greek, that allowed us for the first time to actually understand hieroglyphics and allowed us to translate it into other forms of language, which is really, really cool. Okay. Now, let's talk about mummification, because this also has to deal with the cultural practices that Egyptians believed in and things that they valued. Right. So first of all, what is mummification? Yes, it obviously is the preserving of dead bodies, but it's much, much more than that. OK, it was a way for Egyptians to preserve what they thought was most important, which was a continuity to the afterlife. So it focused on 2 things. Number 1 is your soul. Okay, which again, getting carried on to the afterlife is a nice thing. And then also you were buried with many and most of your possessions because you wanted those to be accessible with you in the afterlife as well. Okay, so again, it was believed that what you were buried with, you took with you, which is really funny, actually, when pharaohs die, because then what happens is if you're one of their servants, they kill all the servants, and you die because they want you to be there with the pharaoh, when he goes to better places. If you click this video right here, and I totally encourage you to do so, on the site itself, it will show you what it is like for a modern human to get mummified. It's pretty awesome. Okay. Also, here, just please make sure you watch John Green's summary of what we've talked about so far and give me 5 bullet points of important things that you think that he talked about in the video. Once you do that, then you get a choice. You get to split between one of the 3 large time periods in Egyptian history. I'm going to go ahead and do all 3 here. Feel free to do one for now. Just please be aware that later, when it comes time to study for quizzes and tests, I highly recommend that you go back and you check out the 2 that you did not do. Okay. Again, I'm trying to be conscious of your time here. So let's talk about the Old Kingdom. Okay, the Old Kingdom is basically what everybody's mom knows about Egypt, which is that it has pharaohs, they built the Great Pyramids, and that's probably about it, right? So let's explain a little bit about the Old Kingdom and what it actually entailed. So yes, the pharaohs become in charge of things. They are considered to be a god. They have absolute power. That being said, though, they're not actually the ones that run the day-to-day operations in Egypt. That's headed by a vizier or visor. I've heard it pronounced both ways. And they'll handle all the nitty-gritty stuff that a pharaoh would not want to have to deal with being in charge. Stuff like taxes, making sure the farming goes okay, irrigation planning, managing a bureaucracy, which are all like the people who work for you, right? There you go. It's also, again, when the Great Pyramids get constructed, the only ancient wonder of the world that is left on Earth. And right here, if you click, there's a video you can watch where they talk about how it was constructed. Now, what's going to bring down the Old Kingdom? First of all, a lot of power struggles, crop failures, and then also those darn pyramids were really expensive. So that is going to bring the collapse of the Old Kingdom. Right here, if you click, John Green will summarize kind of what I talked about, and then you can click this signpost to go on. I'm going to go ahead, though, and check out the Middle Kingdom in case that was one of the ones you picked. Okay, the Middle Kingdom is basically a super turbulent, sucky time for Egypt. There's a lot of rebellion. The Nile doesn't flow how it's supposed to. I don't know why. these things just happen in geography, right? Egypt gets invaded by Nubia, which is located very, very close to them. And then also another group called the Hyksos. And the Hyksos are basically this outside group that come in one of these rare invasions that actually happens of Egypt. And they rule them for many, many years. Now, kind of a cool thing here, and a new term that we need to talk about, is something called cultural diffusion. And that is the spreading of cultural traits from place to place. Something that the Hyksos bring in is something called chariots. And it's this, if you don't know what a chariot is, it's a horse that basically has to pull something, and that pulling something is the chariot. Okay. Now the Egyptians will totally steal this idea, implement it into their own technology, and then eventually the Egyptians will kick out the Hyksos. And when that happens, that is when we get the last kingdom in Egyptian history. Again, if you're doing this one on your own, you want to make sure you watch the John Green video there. So the Hyksos are gone. It's time for the new kingdom. Okay. The new kingdom is kind of the golden age of Egypt. In a whole bunch of ways. Military conquests, notable leaders, that gal in the back right there, that is Hatshepsut, and it's a good example. Okay, she serves as a really good example of how women likely had much more power in Egypt than like actually in many other societies in terms of their own time periods. Now that is because why do we pick on her? Well, because she was technically ruling in the name of a young male heir who was supposed to have the throne, but she basically just declares herself pharaoh and then runs it like a boss for a good long time. Okay, there will be other leaders that will come along in Egyptian history that are also strong female rulers. And again, this is just kind of an indicative thing about Egyptian culture, that women enjoyed relatively more power compared to some of their neighbors. Another good example might be Cleopatra, right? But she's in later Egyptian history. Now, over time, what will happen to the Egyptians? They're basically just going to get invaded, and that is because of some changing technology stuff, which we could get into. Deserts don't become a problem anymore, and so the Assyrians, the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans, they're all just going to kind of invade Egypt, and it's not a fun, happy time. Okay, so again, John Green summary, and then you can click the signpost to go on. Something fun that I thought we might end with here. You can pick whichever three of you'd like to watch, or you can just, watch them all. These are skits, but they're based on real Egyptian things. So beauty and medicine, uses for slaves, hair care, all fun things I would encourage you to check out. All right. If we then go on, we've got an activity called the Gods of Egypt. I'm going to let you take care of this on your own time. The directions are all right there. Okay, just about having you kind of think about what particular gods and goddesses in Egypt reveal about the Egyptians themselves. And then the last thing is this vocab puzzle. Okay, and again, the directions are right here. They're also, once you click, it's all in there, as you'll see. Okay, so I look forward to seeing your vocab matrices. Again, make sure these worksheets get turned into me, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.